All right, so what we're going to be looking at in this experiment is how do flaps in a plane affect the flight pattern of that plane. So we're going to have to look at first, what is a plane, how does a plane fly without flaps? So once you've made your paper airplane, you're going to go ahead and test it without flaps. And I'm about to show you how I did my first 3 tests. And then after that, we'll come back and I'll show you how to cut the flaps in the airplane. All right, so good luck. Hey kids, it's Mr. Hammond here. So the airplane challenge, this is what you're going to be doing. After you've made your airplane, it's going to be your first step to make your airplane, and this is the airplane I'm going to be using today. I actually had 2 other cool ones, but the kids destroyed those, so this is the only one I have left. The other thing you'll need to do is either print this paper out, and I've given a link for this paper. This is your chart that you're going to be using. You can either print it out or you can just draw it in your science notebook. And then you also need a pencil. All right, so I'm going to start by taking my airplane, and I'm going to do 3 trials of throwing it from a set point. So for me, I'm going to make a mark back there with one of the toys. I'm going to throw this 3 times. I'm going to record how many inches it goes. You can do centimeters too, and I'm going to record my distance using a tape measure. Tape measures are great because they have like 25 feet on them. All right, so I'll do that, and I'll come back and show you what my results are. Okay, so I've performed my experiments, and I left the last airplane to the distance it traveled to show you kind of how I measured it as well. So let me show you how I set this up. I will tell you though, I recorded my information so far right here. So you can see I wrote down the inches, and I put 2 little hash marks after 2 little slashes to represent inches. And the first time I flew it, it was 176. Second time it was 208 inches. And again, when I'm throwing the airplane, I'm not trying to throw it as hard as I can. I just want a good straight flight if I can get that. So I'm kind of pointing the nose up a little bit and casting off to see if I can get to go straight and how far I can get to go. So again, it's not about throwing it as hard as you can. It's about a nice, good, consistent flight. Make sure you use the same airplane every single time for all of these trials. You do not want to switch airplanes, because if you switch airplanes, you brought a new factor into things. So you want to use the same airplane for all the trials in this entire experiment, okay? So let me go show you how I set this up. And sorry, it's going to be a little bumpy. Okay, so I set my tape measure up, but I used a little red car, a little matchbox car, to show the starting point for where I was going to keep my front foot when I threw. So this is like my starting line. And I used a little red car because, frankly, there's a good chance that I'm going to trip or do something to mess up the measuring tape, okay? And then I start my measuring tape at the red car, and it goes the entire distance of my basement. Now this is where I threw the plane the last time. It gets a little tricky at this point, like how do I measure the distance there? So I have this little exercise bar, woohoo, and I set up over there. And I kind of look across, and I estimate to the best of my knowledge. If you have a yardstick, that would be great, but can you believe this? I don't have a meter stick or yardstick at my house. So if I look, the top edge there kind of goes across to about 202 inches. So I gave myself 202 inches for that last one. I'm going to write that in on my chart. So I've now done my 3 throws. I'm going to show you how to fill out your form, and we're going to talk about how to figure out the average. Okay, so first off, I'm going to write down the numbers. My first throw was 176 inches. My second throw was 208. My third throw was 202. But now I've got to figure out my average. I'm going to show you my work on the right-hand side of this page, but please don't write on your form. Do your work on another piece of paper or with a calculator, and then come back and write your average down. So I'm going to do mine here in the bottom. I'm going to do it in red, kind of as a reminder, don't do this on your form. Okay, so first off, to figure out the average, I want to add all three of these up. And if I add all three up, 176 plus 208 plus 202, it ends up equaling 586 inches. Next, I'm going to take 586, and I'm going to go ahead and divide that by the number of trials. In this case, I had 3 trials, so I'm going to put a 3 over here. Now 3 goes into 5 one time, leave me with 2. I pull down the 8. 3 goes into 28 9 times. That's going to give me 27 because 3 times 9 is 27. Going to have remainder 1. I'm going to pull down my 6. 3 goes into 16 5 times. That's going to give me 15. I have a 1 remainder. At this point, I don't have anything else to do, so I have to put a decimal, add a 0, and pull that down. See if I can figure this out. 3 goes into 10 3 times. Leaves me with a 1 again, which means I'm going to have the exact same thing happen. All right, I see this pattern. It's going to go 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 forever. So my answer is 195.33333333. So I want to figure out rounding what it is in inches. So I'm going to write my number again here. I'm going to put a line above the 3 to show that it's never ending. It continues on forever. And I want to round it to the nearest inch place. So I'm going to go ahead and underline the inch place. That's what I round it to. I look next door. And if the number is below 5, it stays the same. If it's 5 or above, then it goes up by 1. In this case, it's below 5. So the 195 stays 195. And that's what I'm going to write down for my answer. That's my average. All right. Now I'm going to talk about how you do the observed flight plan. Now you can see I wrote observed flight pattern. I will have that changed for your form. But again, I'm trying to put this together, so mistakes will be made. To do that, what I'd like you to do is imagine somebody who is watching the flight from the side. So if they were looking at you from the side, your plane would start here. Let's say your ground is right here. I want you to draw how your plane flew. And in this case, in every single case, mine just kind of flew with a gradual motion downwards. It flew down, but it flew mostly straight and then gradually went down. That was my flight pattern. Now I'm going to look at theories on why it did this. And I'm going to go back to that video that described what causes an airplane to work. Okay? Now remember the 3 things? You've got lift, drag, and gravity. We're not going to consider thrust too much because this is not about how far it travels. It's about the shape of the flight pattern. That's really what we're going to be looking at. How do making flaps in a plane change the flight pattern? So if I look at this, it flew in this general direction because gravity eventually pulled it down. So gravity overcame lift to pull the plane down. To the ground. Let me see. Yep, that's it. Okay, so that's really what's going on, is gravity is pulling the plane down. We also have other factors. I could have mentioned that drag is affecting it some. It's slowing down the plane as well. So that's another, I'll add that too. Drag slowed down the plane. Okay, there we go. I got that. So drag was also pushing against the plane, slowing it down. Gravity was pulling it down, and the lift wasn't able to overcome that, along with my thrust. So that's what happened. Now, what you're going to be looking at in this next part is going to be making flaps into the airplane. And you're going to be changing the way the flaps are facing, and we're going to see how that affects your observed flight pattern. So how does it change how the plane flies before it hits the ground? We all know it's going to eventually hit the ground. But by adding flaps, does it change what happens to the plane or how it flies? All right, that's that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you so much. All right, so we just got done doing our first 3 trials. We went ahead and we filled out our form, so we found the average. We talked about the flight pattern. We talked about our theories, why it was doing what it was doing. By now, you should already know the basics about lift and drag and thrust and gravity and how that affects your airplane. But now we're going to mess with things, okay? Now the experimentation part comes up because we're going to affect how the plane flies by making flaps in the back of the plane. So to do that, I think I'll draw like lines first to show you what I'm doing. My flaps are going to be about 1 inch wide and 1/2 inch in depth. So I'll show you what these lines look like. Here's the back of my plane. Here are the lines. Okay, I'm going to cut on those lines. And now I'm going to fold them. And if you look on your chart, the first way we're going to be testing it is by folding both flaps up. I'm going to look at my chart. So I've made my cuts. Now I'm going to fold my flaps up. And I just got to tell you, this whole thing came about from me remembering what I did when I was bored as a kid. Because, man, I was bored as a kid a lot. My mom and dad always had something they were doing. They very rarely just sat and played with me. So I had to figure out how to do that. So here's the paper airplane. I'm going to try to show you different views. Here's a side view. Back view. And kind of an angle view. So you can see the flaps. I've folded them both up. So that's kind of what it looks like from the front. Okay, so I'm now going to do 3 tests in which I throw the airplane. I'm going to see the distance it goes, figure out the average. I'm going to draw a picture of how the flight pattern was. I mean, I know it's going to hit the ground, but I want to see if it changed the flight pattern by putting these flaps in there. And then I'm going to give my theories why that happened. Okay, when I'm done, I'm going to perform another experiment, 3 more trials with the same plane. Only this time, I'm going to turn my flaps down. Now they're both going to be down. This is what the plane looks like from the back. Kind of the front side view. See if you can see it. So they're both down. And then last, I'm going to turn one flap up and one flap down. So it looks something like that from the back. One flap up and one flap down. And I'm going to do 3 more trials, figure out the average, look at the flight pattern. If everything goes well, this will be the hardest one to draw because it's kind of kooky. And then I'm going to write my theories on why. And that's really what we're going to be looking at, okay? So good luck on this next thing. This will take you a little bit of time. Please take your time. Do a good job with it. And if you need somebody to help you, grab one of your siblings. Get them to help you, right? Just to have more fun with it. And it'll give them something to do too. So good luck.